Let me just go back. So real quick, what I was saying about the definition of veganism, it's very important for the activist community to really understand and memorize this definition. It's not that difficult. It's very simple. It's not complicated. The doctrine that man should live without exploiting animals. It doesn't say anything about health. It doesn't say anything about the environment. It doesn't say anything about diet or food. So it's important for us to remember that, so when we're outreaching, we focus and stay the course, okay? So this was a definition by Leslie Cross in 1951. So this dates back a long time ago, okay? But veganism has recently become quote unquote popular, as I mentioned, thanks to the advancement of technology, that people are able to share the truth exponentially. You know, people are now learning the truth and are going vegan as a result. Now, again, a lot of people claim to be vegan, not really understanding the definition of veganism. They think it's a diet. So there's a statistic that says that 83 or 87% of vegans go back to eating meat. Well, okay, they weren't vegan to begin with. They were plant-based. They were eating a plant-based diet. They were not doing it for the ethical, moral issues of animal rights. So yeah, so if you're not doing it for those reasons, you're doing it for your own whatever health benefits. How long do diets last? Usually they last a couple months. People go back to their habits. So when you look at it from the perspective of a diet, sure, a lot of people go back. But when you understand what it actually means to be vegan, do you think you can ever really go back if you made the connection, if you understand that we don't have a right to exploit animals, that they have a right to exist, they have a right to be free, they have a right to be happy, they have, you know, they have these inherent rights, right? So once you understand that, you can't really go back, right? Okay. So I have a couple questions. Why are people not vegan? Why do people resist veganism? And why, and when do we think people go vegan? So you had mentioned, somebody mentioned here, because they're not aware. They're not aware, and you said, Wendy? Society has been lying to them, is what you said, right? And then Laz, you were starting to say?
Yeah, I was just elaborating on the, like the dominant social paradigm.
Dominant social paradigm. We don't question it, right? I didn't question it, ever. I knew I was eating animals. It's not like I didn't know, but I never questioned it. I just, dominant, whatever paradigm. That. Okay? Okay, so why are people not vegan? You're all right. People are not vegan because they were born into a society, they were born into a world where since they were a child, they were not given a choice. So they learned to eat and use and exploit and wear animals and to view them in a way that allows us to continue to exploit them. Okay? That's why people are not vegan. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. Social conditioning is a thing. It's real. It's our job as voices for the animals to help bring that truth to them so that they can arrive at that realization, which will give them the best chance of making the connection. When each one of us went vegan here, did we have an aha moment? Yeah? Yeah. We had an aha moment, right? That's called making the connection. It's like you saw things differently. You understood things differently. You're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? At least that was my experience. I was like, whoa. And I had the same experience. I was like, everybody needs to know this. And that's why I became an activist, because I was like, you know, nothing's going to change because people don't know. But if they know, they'll change. Okay, why do people resist veganism?
Because it's different. Like, people are not used to change.
Okay.
So they see it different. They're like, what is that? I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't want to try that.
They resist change. Right.
They want to remain
They
comfortable.
want to remain comfortable. They're lazy.
It's difficult. They don't want to be different from their
They
family.
perceive it to be difficult.
They perceive it to, yeah, they don't want to be different from their family.
They
They
don't-
don't want to stop doing what they're used to doing.
They don't want to be social outcasts because that's how they're. That's
And
how.
their friends, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Why do people resist? Does anybody else want to share anything?
People don't care.
Some people don't care. Yeah.
Also because it would take for them to reflect upon themselves and really look at what they're doing.
Right.
When you go vegan, you have to
Yes.
A lot of self-reflection.
A lot of self-reflection. So I think people resist veganism because they don't really understand what veganism is. Again, if they think it's a diet, they don't want to change their diet. Okay? When we talk to them, they will, and we tell them it's not a diet, and we explain what it is, they will still resist, and it's for all of the reasons that you all mentioned. They resist change. They don't want to be a social outcast. Everybody else is doing it, right? So the main reason I think people resist veganism is because nobody's going to hold them accountable. Everybody else is doing it. Why should I change? You know, what difference can I make? And they also have to have some introspection and recognize that they've been doing something that they probably disagree with their whole life, but they don't want to accept that. When do you think people go vegan?
When they meet you on the street.
When they meet me on the street. When they meet us on the street.
When they have the aha moment.
When they have the aha moment. Very good.
When they gain the awareness.
When they gain the awareness.
When they
And the
understand.
courage to act on it.
And the courage to act on it. Because being aware is one thing, but then acting on it is another.
When it stops feeling like weird.
When it stops feeling weird,
Yeah, when people don't feel that they're social outcasts or that they're like going against.
well, I tell people, listen, when you go vegan today, be prepared because you're going to be a social outcast. But even though that's true, you still need to do it because it's the right thing to do. Because I don't like to lie to people. I want to be honest with them. When you go vegan, it's going to be, your family's going to start to mock you, your friends are going to start to, you know, and you're going to be seen differently. But just because that's true doesn't mean that I shouldn't go vegan, because going vegan means that I'm doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So unfortunately, until more of the society goes vegan, we are going to be the odd ones out. And that's true, but it shouldn't change the fact that we should or should not go vegan. So yeah, so again, your answers are correct. It's when they have the aha moment, when they make the connection. So why are these questions important? Why did I add them to this presentation? If you know the answers to these questions, it will help you communicate the vegan message to others, because you will understand that it's not their fault. Why are people not vegan? It's not their fault. So I can't get mad at you. I can't get frustrated with you. I don't care if you give me objections. I can't get mad at you because it's not your fault. Your objections are only a defense mechanism. When you say plants have feelings, I know that you don't really care about plants, and I know that you are just looking for some kind of an answer. You're looking for some kind of an answer, but you can't come up with one. So your brain's like, oh, well, what about plants? But you don't actually care about plants. You don't actually believe that plants and animals are anywhere near the same in terms of like sentience and their ability to understand and experience life, right? We know, when somebody tells me that, I know that they don't actually believe that. Because if they did, they need a mental hospital or whatever, right? I know they don't actually believe that, but I can respond in two ways. I can respond frustrated, like, why is this person telling me this? Like, this is such bullshit. Or I can try to understand that they are just suffering from cognitive dissonance, and they are basically spouting at the mouth the first thing that comes to their brain. So we have to give them an opportunity to understand. Now, that doesn't mean that, well, we'll talk about it later. Let me just keep going. Okay. So when do you think people go vegan? So then I said, is your answer based on the definition of veganism? If not, try again. So with this group, you all answered correctly, but sometimes people will say, when do you think people go vegan? Because they want to be healthy, or because they are concerned about the rainforest in the Amazon, or because of any other reasons. Those things might lead you to veganism, because you will start to, if you dive deeper and go down the rabbit hole, you'll start to learn about what the animals go through, and you'll start to understand and learn what it means to be vegan. So those things might lead you there, but it's not what made you vegan. What made you vegan is making the connection. You understood the principle of veganism. That's when you went vegan. Even if you were vegan for 2 years, eating vegan, but you didn't really understand. Like, let's say you consider yourself vegan, but then you would go to the zoo. Okay, you called yourself vegan, but you weren't really vegan because you were going to the zoo. Once you understood what veganism meant and you made the connection, at that moment is when you go vegan. So everybody that goes vegan does it overnight. Because making the connection is something that happens like this. Okay? All right. If someone asks you, why are you vegan, what do you think should be your answer?
Because I'm against exploiting animals.
Because I'm against exploiting animals.
Animal abuse.
I'm against animal abuse.
Because I don't see animals as commodities.
Because I don't see animals as commodities. Anybody else?
I say, maybe it's not the right thing, but I always say because I don't want to eat anything with a soul. I don't want to eat anyone with a family that feels, thinks.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard kind of like somebody I've seen on the internet, I don't eat anything that farts, or I don't anything that has eyes. But, and again, what I'm going to share is my opinion and what I think is more effective. I'm not saying that that's not effective. That's effective, but I think there's something more effective to get the point through. When we say eat, we're reinforcing the idea that veganism is a diet. So we want to stay away from that to help them understand what it actually means to be vegan.
So like my answer to that has changed, has evolved throughout my veganism, like by doing like outreach and stuff, because when I first went vegan, I didn't even know how to answer that question. And people would attack me because I wouldn't know how to answer. And people would be like, oh, we're supposed to be eating animals, la 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 la. So I didn't even know how to even express that. Like, and then it has changed.
Yeah, we don't know. When we first go vegan, we don't know the answer. When I started doing activism, I was afraid to go out on the streets and talk to people because I was like, well, what if they give me a question I don't know how to answer? Okay, we're going to talk about, there's one universal answer that works for all objections, but yeah. So does that make sense? I think that if we focus on the definition of veganism, we stay away from words like food or eating or anything like that. So I think that a better response would be, why did I go vegan? Because I reject the exploitation of animals. I reject the idea that it is okay for humans to exploit animals. I understand that if I was the animal in this situation, I would not want others to exploit me. Okay? So I propose some answers in the next slide. So why are you vegan? Okay? Because I reject the exploitation of animals. You're basically using the definition. Why are you vegan? Because I follow the definition. I reject the exploitation of animals. You can say I reject the idea that animals are here to be exploited by humans. I'm vegan because I understand that animals are individuals who wish to be free, to not be exploited, to not be enslaved, to not be tormented, tortured, and killed for unnecessary reasons. Oh, well, but what about lions? Are you going to convince a lion to go vegan? So we're going to talk about those objections, okay? We're going to talk about that. But that's how I would respond. They're going to tell me, well, what about lions? And then I'm going to have to respond to that. But that's my response. They have to understand that I am vegan because I reject the exploitation, the cruelty, and death of animals for unnecessary reasons. And the second part of that answer, so I always answer two parts. It's not either or, it's both of these. I always answer using both of these. Because I reject the exploitation of animals and because I can live vegan, I have a moral obligation to live vegan. So I highlighted the words in red where I usually emphasize that word. Because I can live vegan, I have a moral obligation to live vegan. Okay? So what is that telling them? That's telling them that I reject it and I can, therefore I must. I don't have a choice. Ask me if I'm choosing to be vegan. No, I'm not choosing to be vegan. I am vegan. Because I reject the exploitation of animals and because I can live vegan. Okay? Now, of course, I can choose to not live vegan, but then I wouldn't be in alignment. I can't say that I'm against the cruelty and exploitation of animals and then not live in alignment with that. That's not possible.
I think
Yes.
So, can this answer change depending on people that are around? Because, like, someone said about the soul, so if it's spiritual people, they like a lot all the stuff about karma, soul, and so on.
Right.
Can it be changed, or it's better still to keep this?
So I leave that up to you. So what I think is that you should answer honestly. And if you've gone vegan, it's because you reject the exploitation of animals. Does anybody disagree with that? So be honest. No matter who I'm talking to, if they ask me why I went vegan, that's my response, regardless of who they are, spiritual, religious.
This is a way of pressure, like, these people,
Yeah.
because they will think different.
Yeah, but if we speak truth, regardless of who they are, they will absorb that. And they will, because if we try to spin it to them, we're not being as truthful or as honest, I think. But I mean, you can add to this, certainly. You can say, and I also feel that, like you said earlier, like animals have souls and this and that, but just be careful, because sometimes the more you say, the more it opens the door. It opens the door for arguments. Because some people will say animals don't have souls. Didn't you know that?
Hate that.
So now you've opened the floodgates. You've opened the floodgates. Okay? Yeah. All right. What is vegan outreach? Anybody?
Speaking on behalf of
Spreading awareness?
Speaking on behalf of animals.
Speaking on behalf of the animals.
Holding people accountable.
Holding people accountable. Very good. Okay? Yeah, again, you guys are right. That's basically what it is. Vegan outreach means that you are speaking on behalf of the animals in the way that you would want to be spoken for if you were in their situation. So, what does that mean? If I'm talking to somebody and I start getting frustrated and I start insulting them or shaming them or blaming them, now shaming and blaming is okay in other scenarios. But when we're doing outreach, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. You can't shame somebody if they're unaware, if they were socially conditioned. How can you shame them? That means I'm shaming myself for 42 years. I can't really shame myself. I didn't know. I was a product of society. It's a valid excuse, but once you become aware, it's no longer a valid excuse. Okay? So a lot of the times at our cubes, we do a briefing before the cube starts, and one of the things that I'm saying nowadays, and I think it helps the activists, is being frustrated in this world that we live in is perfectly normal. I'm not telling you to not be frustrated. We have every right to be frustrated because 99.99999% of humanity is doing that which we seek to abolish. So it is very frustrating, especially when we talk to people and they give us all kinds of excuses, they deflect, they attack, they get aggressive. It's very frustrating. I'm not gonna lie, it's very frustrating. So be aware of that frustration. But if you want to be effective, you need to put that to the side. Because having an outreach conversation while you're frustrated is a recipe for disaster. You will not get through to the person. You are wasting your energy and your time, and you're not really doing anything for the animals. So again, if you are conscious that you might get frustrated in the middle of a conversation, at least you've kind of like proactively made yourself aware that that might happen so that you can be ready for it when it does happen. Because if you're not ready for it, then you might just get frustrated and not realize it. But if you know that you might get frustrated, you can say, oh, I got to put that frustration to the side. So I always say at the beginning of the cubes, leave your frustration at the door. When you come to the cube, come as frustrated as you want. When you walk through the door to do outreach, you take out your frustration, you put it in a basket, and then you go inside. When you leave, you pick it back up, and you can be frustrated. But I'm telling you, if you outreach while frustrated, you are wasting your time. and you are wasting your energy, and you are not helping the animals. Okay? So just be aware of that. It's very, very important. Now, to that note, if you find yourself that you're getting frustrated, it might mean that the person is not reachable. What do we do if somebody's not reachable? We stop reaching them. We stop outreaching them. Thank you for your time. Please have a nice day.
Yeah.
That's how I end my conversations.
Yeah, we need a little more second on that, because as long as I've been doing this, that's still my problem with outreaching. I give people way too many chances.
I know.
You know?
I know.
Yeah, man.
I know.
Like, I'm aware.
But you recognize that and you're aware.
Yeah.
So now that you're aware, you can implement preemptive strategies so that in the middle of a conversation, you can be like, wait a minute, is this what I'm doing again? How do I get out of it? Okay? It's very important because every second that you're talking to somebody that's not reachable is a second that you could be talking to somebody that is reachable. Who would you rather talk to? Somebody that can be reached or somebody that can't be reached? There's plenty of people out there. Focus your energy on those who can be reached. Now, that doesn't mean that as soon as I start outreaching somebody and they give me the, well, what about plants have feelings? I'm going to be like, oh, this person's not reachable. Screw them. And I walk away. No. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're suffering from a defense mechanism because their brain is kind of like, short-circuiting, and they're telling me lions eat meat and plants have feelings and all this kind of crap. I'm going to answer those objections, recognizing that something's happening in their brain. I'm not going to get frustrated. I'm going to try to help them. Our job as voices for the animals when we talk to people is to try to help people. It's not to be right. It's not to make them feel bad. It's not to demean them or belittle them. That's not our job. We can do that and then we can feel good about ourselves, but we didn't help the animals. Helping the animals means helping people make the connection. That's what it means. And you have to strategize in whatever way you need to give yourself the best chance to help somebody make the connection. Okay?
And what is the signs if a person is not reachable? How we can understand that?
We're going to get into that a little bit later. Remind me, okay? Because it's very important. When people are not reachable, you find a way to end the conversation and you move. But you have already given them the benefit of the doubt. You've given them a chance or two. And once you realize they are either trolls or just not reachable, you move on. Now, sometimes I don't move on. And why don't I move on? Because the person I'm talking to is not reachable, but their family is listening. So I will maintain that conversation because this person might be the father and he's the alpha. And he's talking to me and he's like puffing out his chest and he's like talking to me like this. And it's like, this person's not reachable. Yeah, I would end that conversation if it was a one-on-one. But if he has a teenage boy, a teenage girl, a wife, and there's other people listening, I will entertain him because I'm going to say some things that's going to penetrate to the others. Okay? Because they're listening and they're seeing how ridiculous their father is with the what about plants have feelings. The 14-year-old child's going to be like, are you serious? Did you just say that? I'm telling you, children are the best people to outreach because they don't give you this plants have feelings crap. They don't. Okay, this is what adults do. Children, they are more open, they are more understanding. I had a really, really great conversation at our last cube with a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old, one of the best conversations I ever had. And I told them, I said, I love talking to your generation because you guys are open and absorb and ask questions and you want to learn. You don't give me BS like the adults do. The adults are full of BS. And you got to be able to read through that BS so that you can help them.
They're not as conditioned.
And they're not as conditioned.
Years of conditioning that they're young.
Correct.
It's like cement.
Right. And also adults have more ego. Right? Children are like, oh, like they want to learn. Adults think they know everything. Oh, you're not going to teach. Who are you? You're not going to teach me anything. You're going to tell me I'm doing something wrong? What? I don't think so. So they kind of react in a defensive manner. Okay, planting seeds. So we used to say back in the day, we go out on the streets to plant seeds. You tell them about veganism, it's planted in their mind, it flourishes, it grows, and then they go vegan. That might happen, but that is not the goal. That is not the purpose. That might happen, but that is not the goal. That is not the purpose. We have to understand this. Why? People love saying planting seeds. It sounds good. We're planting seeds. I planted so many seeds today. It sounds good, but that is not why we're out there. We're out there, to what you said, we're out there to hold people accountable. Okay? What that means is that we're holding somebody accountable because their actions, their daily choices and actions are not aligned with their own values. Not our values, with their values. So I always tell people, listen, we get accused all the time of shoving our beliefs down your throat. Vegans are always getting accused of that. Stop shoving your beliefs down my throat. You know what I say to people when they tell me that? I tell them, I'm not shoving my beliefs down your throats. I'm shoving your beliefs down your throat. I'm not shoving my beliefs. I'm shoving your beliefs down your throat. You already told me, and assuming that in the conversation at some point they recognize that what they're seeing on the screens is wrong, it's horrible, they don't agree with it. You already told me that you are against what you're seeing on these screens. That tells me what your values are. But I'm here to help you recognize that your actions are completely contrary to what you claim your values are. You say you're against it, but then you turn around and fund it and create a demand for it. And this is happening because of you. So how can you say you're against it while also being the reason that it's happening? Now, I'm not saying that to call you an evil person or a bad person. I'm saying that to help you recognize that that's the truth and that's what's happening. And maybe, again, this is me giving them the benefit of the doubt, maybe you just weren't consciously aware of that. And how do I know that? Because I used to be like that. Yes?
Yes, in the vein of like holding people accountable, like to their own values.
Correct.
Right. So I think like a lot of people shy from outreach for the very reason of like trying to tell people what to do.
Yes.
How to
Yes.
live their lives, but they're not like receptive to like coaching.
Right. Very good. Very good point. So I like that. We are holding people accountable to their own values. Okay? That's very important. Because we are not, and see, this is what I used to think when I first started doing outreach. Oh my God, I'm going to go out on the street, talk to strangers, and try to change their entire belief system. We're not trying to change their belief system. We're trying to change their actions. Their belief system already aligns with ours. And you'll see in a video that I do later, I always say this. You can use it, you can do it your own way, but I always say this. Listen, let's say I ask 100 people randomly on the street, excuse me, I'm doing a survey. Are you for or against animal cruelty? What do you think they're going to say?
I'm against.
Everybody's going to say against, including yourself. If I surveyed you just randomly on the street and asked you, excuse me, are you for or against animal cruelty? You're going to say against. Okay, so you are telling me your values. You are against animal cruelty. For whatever reason you're against it, because you know it's wrong, because you empathize, because you can understand that you wouldn't want to be in that situation, because you understand that animals probably want to be free and not harmed. Because whatever reason you understand and you are against animal cruelty. So now my job as a voice for the animals is to help you recognize that you own those values. I'm not trying to change your values. I'm not trying to change your belief system. I'm trying to help you understand that you own those values, but your actions speak louder than words. Do you think the animals care that you say that you're against cruelty to them? Or do you think they care that your actions say that you are against animal cruelty? Your actions speak louder than your words. They don't care what you say, they care what you do. So we're not out there planting seeds, we're out there to hold people accountable. Now some people we may reach on the spot, they may decide to go vegan on the spot. That's happening a lot more now than it used to. Either because we've gotten much better at it thanks to AV and to what they've taught us, and thanks to us going out there and doing this over and over again and seeing what works and what doesn't. It might be a combination of we're doing it much better now, and that's why people are going vegan on the spot. And also because maybe they have already had some kind of awareness, some level of awareness because of social media or something like that. Okay? So again, if I can get through to somebody and I end the conversation respectfully, thank you for your time. Here's some more information. Have a nice day. If I realize that I've already done everything I could, now it's on them. Okay? They may not commit to going vegan on the spot, but a seed has been planted. That wasn't my goal. That's not why I'm there. But that's like the result of what happened in that situation. Okay, no pandering. What does pandering mean?
Baby steps.
Being friendly, overly agreeable.
Overly.
Try to be likable.
Likeable, yeah. Now, does that mean that if I say no pandering, I'm going to go out there and try to be an asshole? No, I still want to be friendly. I still want to be liked. But I don't want to be overly friendly or overly liked because I think that that might help the message get through. Or overly agreeable. So there's a video we're going to see a little bit later. And again, it's not to criticize other activists because I criticize myself. We're going to see a video that I did where I criticize myself. There's some good things that I did in that video, and there's some things that I don't want to say bad, but areas of improvement. Okay? And so that's why I say we evolve. We see what works or what can be done better. So even though I'm going to criticize another activist, not in our community, but another activist, they did some good things, but there's some room for improvement. We don't want to pander. We don't want to, when they're talking to us, if we're like agreeing with them, but we don't actually agree, that's pandering. If somebody says, oh yeah, I'm vegetarian, I used to be like, oh, that's great, you're almost there. I don't actually think that's great because I know the truth. So why would I say that's great? I'm lying, but I'm pandering because I want them to like me. I want them to think that we're on the same side. I want them to think that what I think they're doing is good. No, I don't think what they're doing is good. So why should I make them think that what they're doing is good? Okay, veganism is not love or compassion. I'm sorry if you disagree, but that's just the truth. Veganism is not love or compassion. Watch. If I don't love animals or I have no compassion, does that give me the right to exploit them? No. So what does love and compassion have to do with it? They have inherent rights to live free from human exploitation, regardless of how I feel about them. That's why the friends not food slogan, I don't really like. I'm not against it, but I don't really like it. I don't use it. I would never wear a shirt that says that, friends not food, because I also don't eat my enemies. Because they have rights. Because they don't want to be exploited. So I know what the message is trying to say, that animals are our friends and we shouldn't hurt them. But we shouldn't hurt anybody that is innocent. Now, between us, it's great that humans have empathy and compassion because it helps us understand their suffering. And by us being able to understand their suffering allows us to reconcile that so that we are not the reason that they are suffering. So empathy and compassion helps. But I can't be like, because somebody could tell me, like, I don't care about animals. I'm not a compassionate person. I had a terrible childhood and I hate the world. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, but still, you don't have the right to cause animals harm. They're innocent. They haven't done anything to you. So it's not about love or compassion, okay? The approach is pure honesty. We don't need to embellish. We don't need to exaggerate. We don't need to lie. When in doubt, be honest. Be truthful. The truth is on our side. We know this already. We don't need to exaggerate or embellish or lie because the truth is already so bad that it doesn't need to be exaggerated. Okay, so just be honest. When you're honest, people can read you. People can read if you're bullshitting them or if you're being honest. So the best way for them to see that you're being honest is by being honest. Because then people will respect you, and we're not out there to be respected, but they'll be like, okay, this person is actually not bullshitting me. They're not beating around the bush. They're not pandering to me because they have a mission. They have a purpose. And they're not going to compromise that by trying to finagle or by trying to exaggerate or by trying to lie. People can read other people very well. Trust me. Okay, speak boldly and with absolute confidence. Now, obviously, everybody has different personalities. Some of us are shy, some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, some of us talk too much. I know that some people think I talk too much, but like I have to talk too much because I'm doing a lecture. But we all have different personalities, but regardless of your personality, you can speak boldly, even if it's soft. You can still speak boldly and with confidence. Now, how do you develop confidence? By having the tools, by being sure in what you're doing. If you're not sure, people will be able to read into that and be like, well, this person's not confident. They're not really sure what they're talking about. Therefore, I'm going to discredit them. They're not credible because they don't seem confident in what they're saying. So I'm not saying have fake confidence. I'm saying be confident because you have the tools. You know, like it works. So just believe that it works because it does. And again, we continue to evolve and improve, but where we are today, we know that that's the best that we have because through trial and error, we know it works. Okay, so speaking boldly and absolute confidence. Okay, don't talk health and environment. We already spoke about this. I never bring it up. I will respond to an objection or to a question or to an argument if they bring it up. I might say something. Now, I do some vegan presentations like I mentioned at universities and stuff like that. One of the first things that I say when I get up on stage, and this isn't to activists, this is just to the general public, I'm out there talking about veganism. One of the first things that I say is, let me get this out of the way because it's important. If we couldn't be healthy, thrive, and survive and sustain ourselves as vegans, I wouldn't be up here on this stage because I wouldn't have a case. If we had to use or eat animals for some reason, then I wouldn't be here because we would have to and it would suck. But I'm not going to tell you to do something that you have to do. The reason I'm up here is because we know that we can be healthy, we can thrive, we can survive on a plant-based diet. We can absolutely live vegan without any compromise to our health. And because that's true, we have a moral obligation to live vegan. That's the extent of what I'll say about health. Because guess what? People think that veganism is a healthy diet. Now, a lot of you know me. How healthy am I?
Not very healthy.
Not very healthy. That's a personal choice. I like to eat processed vegan foods. I like ice cream. I like all these things that are not very healthy for you. I could take it to an extreme and say I eat potato chips and vegan cookies all day, every day, and that's all I eat. Well, how healthy am I going to be? I'm not going to last very long. I'm going to die, and then somebody's going to be like, aha, the vegan.
Because it was vegan.
Right? So I died because I was vegan. No, I died because I didn't freaking nourish my body. Okay? But veganism and health do not go hand in hand. They don't. Unless you make a conscious effort to be healthy. But veganism, what was the definition of veganism? It didn't say anything about health in there. Zero. Okay? So we don't talk health or environment, but we do respond. But we keep it short. We don't go off on tangents and we don't over-explain. Okay, statistics. We stay away from statistics because statistics change all the time. They may have different research than we have, and it doesn't help anybody make the connection. You're not holding somebody accountable when you're debating or arguing numbers. Okay? But like my point is that sometimes we focus too much on stats because we think that if they, this is how I used to think when I first started doing activism. Holy crap, I went down this rabbit hole. I did so much research. So much research. I have a wealth of knowledge in my brain. If I could just take a USB cord and download it to this person, for sure they'll go vegan. Guess what? They're not going to go vegan because information and knowledge isn't enough. It's the holding somebody accountable to their own values. That's what gets people to go vegan. Without any knowledge or information, that's the best way to get them to go vegan. You don't even have to use any knowledge and information. You just hold somebody accountable to their values. That might be enough. Hey, did you know that you're saying this, but maybe before this conversation, I'll grant you the benefit of the doubt that you weren't aware that your actions weren't aligned with your values. I'm going to grant you that. But now that you had this conversation, this is what I tell people, and I think this is very, very good. Before this conversation, I'll grant you, you were not aware. From this point forward, you can't use that excuse anymore. I wasn't aware. You are aware now. You understand me, right? Are you hearing what I'm saying? You get it. You understand me. I'm telling you, I'm just regurgitating what you told me. These are your values. I'm here to help you recognize that your actions are misaligned, okay? So I tell this to people. There is only one valid excuse to not be vegan. Only one. And that reason is, I was not aware. Why were you not aware? Maybe because you were socially conditioned. Maybe because you were born into this world where it's been normalized. Maybe because you've never thought about it at a deeper level. Maybe because nobody's ever, approached you with this idea. Maybe you lived your whole life not really thinking. And I'm saying this because this is me for 42 years, right? I know that I wasn't vegan not for any other reason that I just wasn't aware. It's a valid excuse. I wasn't aware. I didn't know consciously. I didn't know that there was such a thing as veganism. I thought that we had to eat animals. I thought that we had to use animals. I thought that it was okay. Everybody's doing it. We were taught in school protein, calcium. We were taught the pyramid, the food pyramid. We were taught that we needed these things. We do need calcium, but it doesn't have to come from a cow. We do need protein, but it doesn't have to come from animals. Nobody told us that, so it wasn't my fault. I wasn't aware. That's the only valid excuse. But can you use that excuse going forward? You can't, because now you're aware. So you no longer have that excuse available to you. And since there's only one valid excuse, that means that going forward, you have zero valid excuses. You have no valid excuses. If you choose to not live vegan, you are doing so without a valid excuse. Okay? All right. Reachability and conversation length. Julian. Everyone. Okay. The rule of thumb is, 10 to 12 to 15 minutes max. Try to keep it under 50. If you're going past 15 minutes, it's too long, something's wrong, something's not right. The message is very simple. It's a very simple message. I can do it in under 2 minutes. But the reason it takes longer is because they're going to give you some objections. They're going to give you some arguments. They're going to say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about protein? I thought I need protein. That might be a legitimate concern. It's either a deflection. It's a deflection if they know they can get protein through other sources. But if they don't know that, it's not a deflection. It's a genuine concern. I don't want to get unhealthy. I don't want to become weak. Okay, so you answer that question. You help them understand about protein. Okay? So this is why it doesn't take 2 minutes. This is why it takes 10, 15 minutes, because you have to help them. You have to answer their questions. But if they're just trying to deflect, well, what about plants? Plants have feelings. You kill plants too. Okay. We can talk about how to respond to that. Usually what happens is I respond to that, and then they'll move on. Well, we've been doing it for thousands of years. Well, hold on a second. Before you move on to that, what do you think about my response to your original objection about plants have feelings? Don't let them off the hook, because I've seen videos of really good activists. They get an objection, they answer it, and then the person goes to the next objection, and then the activist answers that objection. Well, I like to put a stop to it and let them know that I'm not going to let them go there until they acknowledge my response. It's very important that I get them to acknowledge my response, because what is an objection? An objection is, well, I am not vegan because of this. Okay, but I just answered this. So does that mean you will now go vegan? No, they won't, because it wasn't a real objection. It was a deflection. Okay? So there's a 3 strikes you're rule out. 3 strikes and you're out rule or something like that. They give you an objection, you answer it. They give you another objection. Before you move on, you say, well, what about this? I just answered this. Does that satisfy your objection now? Yes. Okay. What else you got? They give you another objection. You answer that objection. They move on to, no, hold on. Before you move on, I just responded to your objection. Does that satisfy your objection? If not, then you stay on that objection. Don't move on to the next one. They want to move around like this. They want to confuse you and they want to go all over the place. But your job as an activist is to stay focused on the mission and do not let them steer the conversation. You are the one in control, not them. So, if you go on for 30 minutes or an hour, that means that you are entertaining their bullshit. That means that they are not reachable because the message isn't complicated. That's the key. The message is not complicated. It's simple. If they can't understand that in 10 or 15 minutes, it's time to move on to the next person. And it's time to say, this is what I say. And again, I'm nice and respectful. My friend, I would love to answer all your questions. But, sometimes I joke around because I like to be, funny. My friend, I'd love to sit here and answer all your objections, but there's this thing called Google that can answer all your questions. I'm not here, respectfully, I'm not here to answer questions that you can find on your own, the answers you can find on your own. My purpose, my job here is to help you recognize that your actions are not aligned with your values. That's my only job. I'm happy to answer some questions, but I can't sit here all day and answer those questions. I've got other people I need to talk to and help them understand that their actions are not aligned. Here's some more information. Please take a look at these videos. You'll learn a lot more, and Google is your friend. All the questions that you have can be answered on Google. We're not here on how to live vegan. We're here on the why you need to live vegan. The how, you'll figure it out. You know how I know you'll figure it out? Because I figured it out. Nobody told me how to live vegan. When I went vegan, and I'll tell them this, when I went vegan for the animals, because I learned about what happened to them, when I went vegan, I had no idea how to live vegan. I had no idea where to get my protein, where to get my calcium, where to get my iron. I had zero clue. I didn't know what to eat. I thought I was going to have to eat salads for the rest of my life. I don't even like salads. But I went vegan anyway. Okay? And I'll tell them, the first 2 weeks after going vegan, and this is a true story, I'm not lying or embellishing or exaggerating. This is a true story. The first 2 weeks after I went vegan, I had no idea what to eat, so I went to Taco Bell for 2 weeks straight every day, and I ate bean burritos with no cheese. That's what I did for 2 weeks because I had no idea what else to eat. So then I realized, wait a minute, if I keep going this way, that's not going to be very healthy. I need to figure out, so Google's my friend, and I started learning how to live vegan. I did it on my own. Nobody helped me. I know you can do it on your own as well. I'm not here for the how to live vegan. You can figure that out on your own. I'm here to help you understand why you need to live vegan. Okay? Why versus how. We just talked about that. We versus you. And we're almost done. We're going to take a break in 2 minutes. We versus you. I used to do this all the time, and I caught myself. When we say we, why do we do this to animals? Really, we're talking about humanity and society, right? So in a way, it's correct. Why do we, as a society, do this to animals? But it's better not to use the word we, because you are no longer part of that we. It's a form of pandering because you're kind of like including yourself and including them. And so they have less culpability and less blame because they're part of a whole. So that's not going to help them. You got to be direct. Why do you contribute to what you see on these screens? Why are you responsible for this when you say that you're against it? Well, because no, hold on. You're saying this, but you're doing this. You either have to change your values and say, I don't care about animals, I hope they suffer. At least you'll be aligned, you'll be a psychopath and not a very nice person. But at least you'll be aligned. But if you're going to claim to be a good person who cares and understands that animals don't want to suffer, don't want to be exploited, if you're going to say that, then you have to live aligned with that, because your words don't matter, your actions do. This is how you speak to people, with boldness and confidence. Your words don't mean shit, my friend. Excuse the language. Your words don't mean shit. To the animals, they don't. But see, this is how I talk to them. Even though I'm using harsh words, they know that I'm not attacking them. Words don't matter. Actions do. So this is why we're here. We're here so that you can begin to hold yourself accountable. The best way for you to hold yourself accountable is for somebody to bring that realization to you, for somebody to begin to hold you accountable. Because you don't answer to me. Who am I? I'm just a stranger you met on the street. You don't answer to me. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what's going on, what's happening. You decide. And this is what I tell them. This is very important. This is what I tell people. The decision that you make right now will determine your character, will determine who you are and who you want to be for the rest of your life. Now, during the conversation, at some point, I always get people to call themselves hypocrites. I don't call them hypocrites. Now, we're going to see a video later where the activists call the other person a hypocrite, and that went south. I always get them to call themselves hypocrites. I always get them to call themselves a hypocrite. So assuming I got them to call themselves a hypocrite, at the end of the conversation I could say, going forward, you don't have the excuse anymore, and whatever decision you make will determine who you are as a person. It will determine your character, and it will determine who you want to be for the rest of your life. You have two options, two choices right now. There's no third choice. There's only two choices. You can either choose to continue to live as a hypocrite. You called yourself that. I didn't call you a hypocrite. You called yourself that. So you have a choice. You can continue to live as a hypocrite from this moment forward, or you can go vegan. Those are your two choices. There's no third choice. That's it. Can you give me a third choice? There's no third option. It's hypocrite or vegan. What do you choose?
To go vegan.
What do you choose?
To go vegan.
Okay. This is how you help people.
Stop being
This is how you help people. Now they know that I'm not there calling them names and hypocrite and all this to make myself feel better or because I want to be right or argue. They know that I'm doing it because they can sense that I'm trying to help them. So that can only happen if your motive is to help them. You got to approach every conversation with the idea, I want to help this person. Not in a condescending way like, oh, I know so much more and I'm going to enlighten you. Not in a condescending way. I'm going to help this person because I used to be this person. And I wish somebody would have talked to me before because I would have gone vegan sooner. And it's a numbers game. You talk to 100 people, maybe 10 people will go vegan and 90 won't. Maybe 90 you planted the seed and maybe out of those 90, another 10 will go vegan in the next 6 months. Who knows? If you outreach well, effectively, that's the best you can do. It's up to the person to do the right thing. And so the way that I end conversations sometimes, and we'll see this later, they'll say, so what's preventing you from going vegan starting now? That's what it says in the slides. I prefer, because again, even though you defined veganism, to them it's still a freaking diet. That's how bad it is. They still see it as a diet. So at the end of the conversation, I usually like to say, okay, my friend, thank you for your time. It sounds like you understood everything I said. So from this point forward, what is stopping you from doing the right thing? Instead of saying, what is stopping you from going vegan? That has such a profound effect. Because vegan to them is like, oh, what is stopping me from changing my diet? Even though you already explained it's not a diet, it's so much more effective to say, excuse me, what is stopping you from this point forward from doing the right thing? We've already agreed that it's the right thing to do. We've already agreed to that. From the perspective of the animal, it's the right thing to do. Right? Okay. We'll take a short break and then we'll do the accountability flow chart and then That's it. So maybe 10-minute break if you guys want to order something.